Hi, my name is Paul Sell. I'm the Reengagement Systems Manager and the Youth Grants Team Lead for the Youth Development Division. I want to thank you for joining us today for this informational webinar on our Reengagement Collaborative Grant RFA process. With me today is
Molly Burns, and I'm with the Reengagement team as Grant Manager and Policy Analyst.
All right, so today we're going to discuss in a bit more detail than the RFA, the Reengagement Collaborative Grant process and the kind of key things that we want to note for each of you as you're going through the application process. Also important to note that as this is a recorded presentation, your questions will need to be submitted as outlined in the RFA to the single point of contact by May 31st, 2022. This next slide just gives a brief overview of what we'll talk about today. We're going to take a few minutes on each of these categories to, again, hopefully give you some more detail regarding the process and the questions and the information that we're seeking as part of the RFA itself.
Okay, and so the first part that we're bringing to you today is just very briefly how to apply. And this grant, you will be applying for the grant through an online application web portal, which is called SurveyMonkey Apply or SM Apply. Please note that we do have a separate video, which is a tutorial about how to walk through. It's actually a walkthrough of the SurveyMonkey Apply web portal, helps you to navigate various pages in that application. So we do strongly encourage that you watch that video as well. And then for anyone who has never had a SurveyMonkey Apply account before, we have also provided a link with the RFA materials on our website about how to apply for a SurveyMonkey Apply account for first-time users. So please do look at these resources along with the RFA materials on our website. One note on the SurveyMonkey Apply application is once you have completed both task 1 and task 2 of the RFA application, the owner still must submit the application by clicking the submit button, which will be located in the upper left-hand navigation box of the SurveyMonkey Apply screen. And so the owner is the person who creates the Reengagement Collaborative Grant application. And once they do submit the application, they will receive an automated message that the application was received. All right, so at this point, we will give you an overview of this grant. The first point to note is that the Reengagement Collaborative Grant serves youth ages 14 to 21 years, and you can apply for an award of up to $120,000 for the 1-year grant.
On the screen, you can see that we have some highlighted key points of the Reengagement Collaborative Grant purpose. Really, the intent of the Reengagement Collaborative Grant is to coordinate, develop, and expand multi-community systems of re-engagement service providers. The goal remains similar to our other re-engagement grants in that you're seeking to assist youth in achieving a high school diploma or its equivalency. We'll talk a little bit more about the requirements in that later in this presentation. In terms of the re-engagement collaboratives, the big difference between a re-engagement collaborative grant, which this RFA is focused on, than our previous re-engagement grants is that you're focused on establishing and strengthening those systems and connections between the re-engagement networks of schools, educational entities, nonprofits, community-based organizations, and really those youth serving organizations throughout your proposed service area. You can see down at the bottom, our re-engagement system goals remain focused on reconnection to education, high school completion with supports, strengthened and supported career pathways and post-secondary education and training, and then also the collaboration networks. This grant is really focused on that collaboration piece to support the other 3 goals.
So at this point, we'd like to draw your attention to section 2.4 of the RFA, the scope of activities. And this is where you're going to find the requirements of this grant. The subsections of the scope of activities is listed on the screen right now. And so what we'll do is we will talk now a little bit about the application itself. The SM Apply application is broken into 2 tasks. The first task requires you to verify that your proposal fulfills the re-engagement rules and requirements. And then in task 2, you'll be asked for some program or organization information, and then you'll be given the evaluation items or the application questions. And so what we'll do now is we'll use task 1 to break out some of the re-engagement requirements and talk more about the re-engagement collaborative grant concept. To be eligible for a grant under this RFA, applicants must be one of the entities which are listed on the slide in front of you. If you are not one of these entities, you'll notice in the RFA that there is an appeal process. And so you'll want to read that part of the RFA very carefully and follow those deadlines. Another eligibility requirement: to be eligible for this grant, applicants must be either a current YDD 2123 Reengagement Opportunity Grant recipient, or applicants must have letters of support from a current 2123 Reengagement Opportunity Grant recipient in the proposed service area, or applicants must propose to serve a service area within a regional solutions region that does not currently have any 2123 Reengagement Opportunity grants recipients. And so how do you know if you're in a region where there are current re-engagement opportunity grants? You'll need to look at attachment E with the RFA materials, the regional map, and this will tell you if you're in a region with or without current re-engagement opportunity grant recipients. You'll see that there's 11 regional solution regions, and most of them do have current re-engagement opportunity grant recipients. Okay, so the next requirement is the service area requirement. And your proposed service area does not have to cover the entire regional solution area that you'll see in that attachment E regional map. But the proposed service area must serve and or connect at least 2 or more counties, 2 or more school districts, or 2 or more geographic regions. And you're required to use geographic or jurisdictional boundaries, or a combination of, when defining your service area. And one other important note is that in the service area that you're proposing, you're also required to offer the coordination and re-engagement services in that entire designated or defined service area. So you'll note that in the application that you'll be asked to provide in short response, no more than 50 words. You'll be asked to clearly define your proposed service area, and you'll also include the estimate of the total number of youth across that service area who will enroll in re-engagement services over that grant year.
As with all of our re-engagement funds, our rules do require that eligible youth be served as part of these grants. Eligible youth are outlined on the screen, and as part of your initial task 1 requirements, you'll be required to use a drop-down menu to list which youth you will be serving, you will not serve, or the unknown for each of the 4 categories of eligible youth. You'll notice it's broken down into youth ages 14 to 21, who are defined as a dropout, youth ages 14 to 21 who are referred by a referring agency, which are listed on the screen, youth ages 14 to 21 who are not currently enrolled in school and have not earned a high school diploma. And that 4th category is youth ages 16 to 21 who are enrolled in public school, but are behind in credits. And you can see the definitions of what that looks like on that side. But please do note the age difference of 16 to 21. Including with the drop down and identification of eligible youth, there is a short answer response that's required, which is going to be needed to describe how your organization will be able to demonstrate and track that eligible youth are being served and track the educational progress of each eligible youth enrolled within those programs. This next slide shows the required re-engagement services. As with our other re-engagement grants, re-engagement services are defined on the screen as outreach services, educational services, one-on-one academic and career coaching, college and career services, supportive services, and transition to college or career are all part what we call re-engagement services. In this section of task 1, you'll be required to demonstrate how high school completion programming and post-secondary career and/or educational pathways are accessible to all eligible youth in the re-engagement program. As a collaborative, you may not necessarily be providing the direct service to the youth, but you will be required on reporting on all youth served within the collaborative grant. Also to note is that structured educational services is what's required as educational services. These need to be some sort of service leading to high school completion and must be made available to all program participants, but does not necessarily have to be provided by the applicant themselves. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the re-engagement partnerships. So this is different from our other re-engagement funds in that for the re-engagement collaborative grant, an applicant must identify at least 2 re-engagement partners in the proposed service area. You can see that it's broken down into 3 kind of main categories. So in a proposed service area, which includes 2 or more re-engagement opportunity grant recipients, an applicant must upload at least 2 letters of support for current 2021-2023 re-engagement opportunity grant recipients in the service area. If a proposed service area only includes 1 other re-engagement opportunity grant recipient, applicants will upload 1 letter of support from a current ROG recipient, as well as a letter of support from another youth serving organization in the service area. Many of our areas are proposed service areas that don't have any additional re-engagement opportunity grant recipients other than an applicant themselves or an applicant looking to serve an area with no current re-engagement opportunity grants. In that circumstance, applicants must upload at least 2 letters of support for youth serving organizations in the service area. The re-engagement partnerships and the documentation that is required can be built off of attachment G of sample letters of support or partnership. The key thing to note in any of your letters of support or partnership is that the Reengagement Collaborative must describe the roles and the responsibilities of the partners that are listed within those letters.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about task 2. And there are just 2 parts of the task 2. At first, you're going to be asked for a little bit of applicant information. And so a sample of that information is on the slide here. We will ask for the organization business address or physical address, as well as the service address. And then we'll also ask for the county or counties where the youth will be served. In addition to that, program personnel information will be asked for. So name, title, telephone number, and email for various people involved in the grant. You can look at attachment C for a complete list of applicant information that you'll fill up at this point in your application. And then after you put in some of that organization information, you will be into the evaluation items or the applicant questions. And so there's a couple of tips here really to understand the applicant responses. So most of the questions are going to have more than one bullet. And when you're writing your responses to this RFA, you want to make sure that you're answering all 7 questions, but that you're also addressing all the sub-bullets within any question. Another thing to keep in mind is that the narrative or the application responses should be written by describing what you will do. Not what you hope to do or any sort of aspiration, but when you're writing that grant agreement, you're really writing down your firm commitment to undertake specific action if you're awarded this grant. So you want to make sure that you're writing what you will do and understand that requirement. You will also note that each application question has specific word limit by questions. And one little tip that we've seen in the past is that sometimes the word count in a Microsoft Word document might not exactly match the word count in SurveyMonkey Apply. So if you find that SurveyMonkey Apply is not accepting your answer, just double check that a word count might be 1 or 2 words different through this web portal application. Okay, so what we have here on the screen are the 7 evaluation items, the word count limit, the weight and the maximum point for each of the evaluation items. And I'll draw your attention to evaluation item number 6, re-engagement, partnership, and coordination of service delivery. This is where you will be uploading your letters of support. And then in evaluation item number 7, budget narrative, this is where you will be uploading your completed budget. And so here on the screen, we have kind of a snapshot of what that budget template looks like. And just a couple points here. The attachment D budget template that you have with your RFA materials, you can use to complete this budget template. You'll note that the budget template has 2 tabs, and on the first tab, the budget categories that you see listed here are described and explained. And then you will also, once you're in SM Apply, you'll see that you can download a blank budget template. And I just want you to know that that's exactly the same template, which is attachment D budget template, which you get with your RFA packet of materials. And so you would be completing this budget template. And then in that evaluation item 7, you'll be uploading your template as part of your application. So the budget that you're creating is a 1-year budget from July 1, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. A couple of budget details to note is administrative costs cannot exceed 15% of the total budget or the federally negotiated indirect rate. And for this particular grant, startup funds may be requested. And then that startup fund request should not exceed, it shouldn't be more than 25% of the total budget. Okay.
All right, thank you, Molly. Before we start the review of applications, I just wanted to take a moment to point out that if you have any questions on the RFA questions and the process within it, please do review the SM Apply or SurveyMonkey Apply application system, but also the use of the PDF version of the request for application that is online is a great reference and resource for you along the way. If after reviewing both of those documents you have any questions, please do follow the outlined process in the RFA to the single point of contact and make sure that it's submitted prior to the deadline listed in the RFA. So now we're going to jump into a little bit of the review of the applications themselves once you've submitted it, just to give you a general outline of how this process will continue once you hit that submit button in SurveyMonkey Apply. So this slide outlines the score multiplier that some of our grants or some of our requests for applications have typically had. In this RFA, applicants from either a priority region or a federally recognized tribe will have a 20% multiplier added to the points received from scoring of the evaluation items. The priority regions listed here are South Coast region, South Valley, Mid-Coast region, and the Greater Eastern Oregon region. And those counties are listed there for that. And if you are providing or have a proposed service area in one of those counties, you would be able to receive the 20% multiplier from your final score. This next slide talks about how we will be ranking applications once they've been scored by our volunteer review panel. Grant funds will be awarded to applicants in this two-step process as outlined. The first step, as with our last rounds of grant awards, the highest scored application that meets the minimum score requirement per regional solutions region will be awarded a grant. There will be a total of 11 grants that would be awarded to each of the 11 regions in this step 1. After step 1 is completed, step 2, then all applications are ranked collectively from highest to lowest scored. Grants will be awarded starting from the highest scored applicant to the lowest until available funds have been allocated. To note that step 1, if there is not an application from one of those 11 regions, that region will not have an automatic award given. This next slide again shows the regional solution regions, the 11 outlined regions there. And you can use attachment E for your regional map to access which counties are covered. Important note on your regional assignment: your business address that's listed in your application and on your business registry determines your region, the region in which you will be assigned for in step 1. This next slide shows the method as listed in 4.4.1.1 in the RFA that you can request to change region if you provide service in a different area or region than your listed business address. You want to make sure to follow the listed procedures in the RFA by June 7th in order to request this change.
Okay, so for the final part of our presentation, in the RFA in section 1.4, we have the application timeline. And just to note that any of those questions, requests for clarification that you might have, that you're going to route through the single point of contact, those are due May 31st by 1 p.m. And another important time to note here is that the closing date, the applications are due June 17th, also at 1 p.m. Okay, so we'd like to thank you for spending your time with us and viewing this. And we wish you success in applying.